we would now like to welcome Octavio Kulesz.
He's a UNESCO expert on cultural diversity, digital creativity, and artificial intelligence. Octavio founded the digital publishing house Teseo, one of the biggest in Latin America, and has researched the potential of digital publishing in developing countries. Today, he'll share insight, though, on the impact of AI on the arts and creative industries, outlining opportunities and challenges, and perhaps offer some policy recommendations. It's great to have action points in a very speculation-heavy field.
Absolutely. So, Octavio, you are calling in now from Buenos Aires, if I understand correctly. So it's a little bit earlier in the morning there for you. Welcome to the EUNIC digital stage.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Julian. I'm really happy to be here, and I will present a few slides. Do you see the slides? Yes. Well, AI is dominating the headlines at the present time. There is a lot of discussion about how AI will revolutionize finance, health, education, manufacturing, mobility. But what about culture? Well, the relationship between AI and culture is usually overlooked. There is not much discussion about it. And this omission is very strange, because actually when we use machine learning systems, we feed the machine with data. And in many cases, the data we use to feed the machines is made up of cultural expressions. Why? Suppose we feed the machines with photos, we feed the machines with text, videos, and songs. So those are cultural expressions. So culture serves usually as an input for machine learning systems. And culture is also an output of machine learning systems. Why? Because right now, hundreds or thousands of artists and creative entrepreneurs and companies are using AI to create or produce works in the field of music, visual arts, writing, and so on. So there is a very close relationship between AI and culture, and it's very, very important to discuss it. And what are the opportunities of using AI in the arts and cultural sector? Well, Marcus mentioned some of them. Many artists I spoke with recognize that AI, like as if AI augmented their creativity. They feel enhanced with the use of AI applications. AI also lowers the entry barriers, especially for newcomers. Imagine people that don't have much expertise in music or in the creation of film. Well, with these tools, they will be able to compose a symphony or to create a movie. It's also higher productivity for the creative industries. You can do much more with less. So it's you can reduce costs, etc. There are new services being created, new jobs, especially high-skilled jobs. And this is also very beneficial for the public, because as we are creating more and more cultural expressions, the audiences will have access to a larger variety of content. But we also have to identify the challenges. The problems here are numerous. First of all, while it's true that the AI systems can lower the entry barriers, well, this can work maybe for a programmer or a person who knows some coding, or at least they know how to use the tools. But for the so-called traditional artists, if you think of a guitar player, of a painter with his or her brush, well, it's not very realistic to ask them to follow a six-month course in machine learning. It's not really their job. So there is an entry barrier there for traditional artists. Also, there is a lack of data. If you use machine learning, you need massive amounts of data. And okay, we have public domain works, we have openly licensed works of art, but there is a huge amount of data that is proprietary and is in the hands of private companies, big tech companies. So there is another challenge here. Another question, and I saw it was raised in the chat by Stefanos. Who is the owner of the copyright of the works of art created by the means of AI? Because, okay, we can say it's the artist who used the AI application. But is it only that person who should be the right owner? Or maybe we should also include the programmer or any other person that created the software or the algorithms. And even we should include the people who created the massive amount of data we are using to feed the machine. Because if we are using a system to create music in the style of the Beatles, and we feed the machine with songs by the Beatles, we will have a new song in that style, but shouldn't we credit the Beatles some way? Well, it's really a tough question to answer, and that's why I included in the challenges. Another big problem is that while it's also true that AI will create high-skilled jobs, it will also lead to the destruction and the massive destruction of jobs in the creative sectors. I'm thinking mainly of translators, proofreaders, illustrators, designers. Many of those jobs, or part of those jobs, will be replaced by machines very soon. And this is also related to the problem of market concentration. We are witnessing here a very dangerous trend, which is that these large tech companies, the Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, and many others, not just in the West, but also in China, are becoming the de facto leaders in the cultural field, in the cultural ecosystem. So, and this is not really sustainable in the long run. Another problem is this challenge related to the filter bubbles. We all know that recommendation algorithms tend to isolate users in their own tastes, previous tastes. So what will happen one day when companies will be able not just to recommend content to specific users, but also to create content for those individuals? We know that many of those platforms are hiring experts in AI, in creation with AI. So they will be able in a few years to create, for example, songs automatically and propose that song for a specific user. And that will create a sort of perfect bubble around the user. And what will that mean in terms of social cohesion when society is no longer working with shared values and shared meaning and common identities? So that's another issue, I think. And finally, last but not least, is the question of the gap between the global north and the global south. We usually think of the digital gap, which is a serious problem still today, because people in developed countries have more access to technologies and to digital skills than people in developing countries. But AI here is adding something qualitatively different, because if you add AI in the equation, now it's not just a digital gap, it's also a creative gap. Why? Because a person who will have AI tools and will know how to use them will be much, much more creative by many orders of magnitude than a person that doesn't master these tools. So there are opportunities and there are many challenges. And within this context, I think we could think of many ideas and recommendations for the future to benefit from the opportunities and to mitigate the challenges. First of all, it will be essential to raise more awareness about how AI is impacting the cultural world. Raise awareness among artists, among creative industries, among the public, among policymakers. Also, it's very important to provide training to those actors, especially to artists. And networking. Artists now need to network more with programmers, with developers and web designers and data scientists, because usually when I had several interviews with people working with AI in the arts, and the most successful cases are actually not only coming from individuals, but especially from collectives of arts. So I met the people from Obvious Art in France. They create paintings with GAN technology that Marcus mentioned. They sold this Edmond de Bellamy painting in Christie's for more than 400,000 euros. And actually it's a group. They work as a group. One of them is an artist, pure artist. One of them is an expert in AI, and another one is an expert in marketing. So networking is essential at this stage. We need also to strengthen the local data ecosystem because we need more data. We need also more research about these trends, and especially more debate about the impact of large tech companies on the diversity of cultural expressions. And finally, in my view, it's crucial that in every country, the cultural sector they need to include the cultural perspective into the AI national strategies. So every country now, most countries now are devising their own AI national plan. So how to deal with education, finance, etc. But culture is usually not mentioned. And this is very risky. And the cultural sector needs to do something in order to integrate culture into those plans. And also include culture in the declarations about on the ethics of AI. I had the opportunity to be part of the group of experts that drafted the first project of a global recommendation on the ethics of AI for UNESCO. There were 24 of us in the group. It was absolutely fascinating. We worked on this for several months earlier this year. And this is the only recommendation so far that includes culture as a key policy area. You can visit the text, and maybe later I can put it on the chat. So that's it for the opportunities, challenges, and some ideas for the future. Thank you very much. So if you feel interested, these are my contact details, and many of the ideas I presented here are included in my papers that you will find them on my profile on academia.edu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Octavio. It was very helpful to have, yes, some points looking towards the future as to what we might keep in mind as for a building policy or as cultural institutions, what we might keep in mind. Let's also bring Marcus back on the screen too. Or no, did you have a question?
Well, I had one particular policy question though for Octavio. I mean, AI could sort of democratize or distribute what otherwise would be rather high level or intensive, difficult creative processes. And with remote access to machines and to processing power capable of running these neural nets or machine learning, that could also be distributed widely as 5G is adopted, and as people would be able to essentially from their smartphone rent remote access to machines capable of running these neural networks and machine learning processes. And I want to know if there is a plan or perhaps a policy or any action points that may be taken to help maybe enable this remote access to powerful technology to be distributed and made accessible to a wide range of people, but particularly in the global South.
Yes, absolutely. Well, computing power and the access to AI solutions is becoming more and more presented as a service. So you don't need to own the servers, and there are many projects, especially carried out by private companies. So now it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to use those solutions. Like if you use the Google Cloud products or any other service or Amazon Web Services, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's becoming more democratized, because you really, and in that case, you will be just a consumer, but you need also to have some kind of access and be the owner in a way of the whole life cycle of the service you are providing. Otherwise, you will become very dependent on the solutions provided by third parties. So that's why it's very useful. It's lowering prices, but I don't think it's the final solution for the democratization of AI on a global scale.
Right. I mean, I believe it's certainly a space in which there could be some public involvement to ensure that there's accessibility to this technology, especially as it becomes actually, as you said, more cheaper and easier for people remotely to access as powerful of technology as anyone else. It's possible. And yeah, I would hope to see that public initiatives help to increase and make that access available.
I have one question for both of you as a bridge question to our next speaker, who is a curator who works with artists who work with and through AI. We know the Artaud quote, "No one makes art but to get out of hell," right? And we know that art is going to be made with a pencil and paper about AI that is just as important as art that is made with AI to deal with AI. And so I wonder, as we're speaking now to an audience of cultural institutions and leaders of cultural institutions, what we imagine the institutions or the houses for work that is dealing with AI and also that is made using AI. We know right now there's been, in the past 10 years, we've seen a big shift in the art world. We've seen museums sort of fall out of calibration with the way artists are making art. And I wonder if you can imagine even one or two changes or one or two even programmatic shifts that institutions should be making to better calibrate to the questions of AI. Yeah.
Well, I think digital literacy is going to be a key component in here, because it's a case of program or be programmed, and I think that you need to be able to understand how the AI is working. As Octavio illustrated, it's having impact on so many different areas of life, and now on the sort of creative world as well. And I think there's an interesting element here which relates to the previous question, actually. I remember going to talk to Zaha Hadid for a program I made, and she complained about these architecture tools which are amazing now and allow, they democratized the ability of people to come in and start making buildings using this software. But she saw that all the buildings had a very similar sort of style, and she employs, she did do, but they're still there in a practice, a lot of coders who understood how to hack this and get inside the code. So I think we're going to need tools, as I said in my presentation, to examine the inner world of the code as it makes its decisions, impacts, makes moral decisions, decisions that will, political decisions that will impact on us, and creative artistic decisions. So I think that digital literacy is going to be key.
I love that digital literacy, but then also critics, like an AI critic. So if we have an AI artist, then we also need an AI kind of critic. Oh, and maybe Octavio wants to respond. There's also a question, but then I know we also should move on. How should we?
If Octavio wants to respond.
Yes,
yeah.
Octavio, would you like to respond to that as well? Thank you,
Yeah,
Marcus.
I totally agree with Marcus. Digital literacy is key. Also, foster more experimentation and networking. I've been participating in a cycle of webinars. I'm adding here on the chat the link if you feel curious, on the impact of AI in the arts and the creative industries in the Francophone countries. This is led by the International Organization of La Francophonie and Wallonie Bruxelles. So it's a cycle of 5 webinars, and the topics that come again and again, over and over again, are digital literacy, experimentation, networking, and awareness. So these are the most important areas in my view.